The radar blip wasn't supposed to mean anything, just another inbound contact over contested airspace. But when Colonel David Rains locked onto the approaching fighter and saw the encrypted Callsign flashing across his HUD, his heart froze. It wasn't just any pilot, it was his son's. Months earlier, Captain Ethan Rains had been reported missing in action, presumed dead after his squadron vanished beyond the front line. Now, the enemy's stealth jet carried his signature, his voice on open comms, his flight patterns unmistakable. Torn between duty and blood, David faced the unthinkable: engage the enemy or risk the lives of his entire wing. Hesitating, the skies above the border became more than a battlefield, they became a crucible of loyalty, truth, and the hidden cost of war. Before we continue, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Introduce Colonel David Rains, a decorated veteran pilot and squadron leader stationed near a volatile border zone in Eastern Europe during an escalating NATO coalition crisis. Explain the geopolitical backdrop: a contested air corridor, the presence of enemy stealth fighters, and increasing electronic warfare. Establish his son Ethan, also a fighter pilot who went missing months earlier during a covert operation. Set the emotional foundation: the father who leads with logic, now carrying silent grief. The narrative moves into the Air Operations Center. Rains' squadron is briefed on new incursions by enemy aircraft jets that seem to mirror NATO flight protocols. Introduce intelligence officers discussing theories of captured technology or AI-emulated pilots. Rains volunteers for patrol duty, partly to stay busy, partly to search for any trace of his son's last known engagement zone. The stakes mount. Enemy drones have begun broadcasting familiar call patterns, creating confusion and psychological strain among NATO pilots. During a high-tension patrol over the frontier, Rains' radar detects an unidentified aircraft entering restricted airspace. The signals and maneuvers are eerily precise to familiar. When the Callsign Falcon Dois Menasechi, his son's old designation, appears on his targeting system, disbelief turns to dread. His wingman insists it's electronic mimicry, but then a voice crackles over the comms, his son's voice, calm and composed, uttering a coded phrase only they would know. This moment fractures Rains' composure, forcing a split-second moral crisis. Analyze the encounter from a military technical perspective. The radar jamming patterns, electronic spoofing capabilities, and stealth envelope of the enemy jet. Introduce intelligence analysis, suggesting the enemy has reverse-engineered, captured NATO avionics, possibly integrating biometric AI based on captured pilot data. The tension tightens as Rains must distinguish real from fake in a battlespace defined by deception. Emotionally, he begins to question not only his mission but the technological ethics of modern warfare. Colonel Rains ended pursuit under the guise of low fuel. Though the truth ran deeper, he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. The image of that jet, flying with his son's old Callsign, haunted every second of his return flight. Back at base, the debrief room was cold and clinical. Intelligence officers combed through his HUD footage, demanding answers he couldn't give. Why did he break chase? Why did he hesitate? The data analysis only deepened the mystery. The enemy aircraft carried encrypted NATO identification. Friend or foe echoes signals consistent with Captain Ethan Rains' last recorded mission that shouldn't have been possible. Someone or something was replicating his son's combat identity down to the smallest flight reflex. When the briefing ended, the colonel stayed behind, staring at the paused radar feed. His reflection floated over the image of that stolen Callsign. Command had ordered a temporary suspension of operations until the origin of the signal could be confirmed. But Rains knew this was no rest, it was a reckoning. Outside, the night over the airfield shimmered with the glow of hangar lights. Pilots passed him in silence, too respectful or too afraid to ask. For the first time in years, David Rains questioned not the mission, but himself. Had mercy clouded his judgment? Or had instinct spared something precious he didn't yet understand? In the stillness before the next engagement, he realized the war had shifted. The enemy wasn't just across the border, it was in his memories, his doubts, his bloodline. 3 days later, the enemy returned not with a single jet, but a formation. Their radar signatures flickered like ghosts, weaving in and out of NATO channels. Every aircraft carried familiar codes, voices, and flight paths from fallen pilots. It wasn't just an air assault, it was psychological warfare. Across the comms, disbelief turned to dread. Pilots hesitated to fire, fearing they might be targeting the echoes of their own. Rains stood at the command table watching the skies fill with chaos. Intelligence officers confirmed what he'd feared. The intrusions were broadcasting from deep inside hostile territory, near the same grid where Ethan's jet had vanished months earlier. He made his decision in silence. No orders, no committee, just a father's resolve, masked as a soldier's duty. He volunteered for a solo reconnaissance sortie, ostensibly to trace the transmission origin. But his real mission was personal. If his son's Callsign still flew, he had to see it with his own eyes. The pre-flight checks were mechanical, his movements precise but hollow. His crew chief saluted. Rains barely noticed. The night sky swallowed his fighter whole as he climbed past 30,000 feet. The radar shimmered with false echoes, and his comms picked up faint static, then a voice, calm, familiar. His son's voice. "Falcon 1, you shouldn't be here." Rains's breath caught. The war had found its cruel rhythm. Data as bait, memory as weapon. Yet beneath the dread, a glimmer of purpose burned. If he couldn't save Ethan, he could at least uncover who had turned his son into a ghost. Rains infiltrates deep into enemy airspace under electronic silence. He detects multiple hostile aircraft, one transmitting his son's voice again. The engagement unfolds as a psychological duel, Rains trying to outmaneuver the phantom pilot while decoding patterns in the enemy's formation. As flares and radar pings illuminate the night sky, the realization hits: this isn't human improvisation. It's an algorithm trained on his son's combat profile. In a heart-stopping climax, Rains fires a missile that disables the enemy jet without destroying it. The wreckage reveals fragments of NATO avionics, a helmet coded to Ethan's biometric signature but no pilot. Command confirms the enemy has been harvesting flight data from downed NATO aircraft to create psychological warfare constructs. The emotional blow is devastating yet clarifying. His son is gone, but his spirit, his skill has been twisted into a weapon. Rains debriefs with military analysts, reflecting on the ethics of identity replication in warfare. He addresses his squadron, reminding them that wars are now fought not just with steel and fire, but with memory and data. His personal loss becomes a lesson for an entire generation of aviators. The enemy can copy your flight path, but never your soul. Months later, Rains visits the air memorial dedicated to fallen pilots. As he watches new recruits train under the same skies, he finds closure not in vengeance, but in the persistence of legacy. In a classified briefing, he learns NATO has begun developing countermeasures to prevent AI mimicry, codenamed Project Falcon. The story ends on a quiet note, the father's voice narrating over the hum of distant jets, reminding us that war evolves, but humanity must evolve faster.